Hey guys, John Polemy here, Actionable Intelligence. Today is Saturday, May 22nd, and this is the weekly market update. As always, the disclaimer, nothing that you see or hear on this video or podcast is to be taken as investment advice, financial advice. Please do your own due diligence. It's your money, it's your responsibility. Okay, this week's reality check. I wanted to talk about the IEA's report that came out, or this new thing that they're talking about, zero carbon to 2050. I mean, I didn't read the whole thing because I can't, I'm not going to do that. But basically, I took some summary material and put it together into a slide. And to show you the nuttiness that's going on in the West, not in the East, not China, not Russia, not these places, but in the West, Western Europe, the United States, Canada, Australia. But this is just completely absurd. They're really going to try to go for this. And well, at least the IEA is saying what they need to do. Whether or not this actually happens is another matter entirely, because I think, we've talked about this before. If you're going to raise the cost of energy, you're going to get less economic activity. People's standard of livings are going to go down. And I think this is part and parcel of this whole fits together what the governments are doing. They've trained the populace now that they're docile and they'll do what they're told. So, as we leave the disease that can't be mentioned on YouTube, hysteria, they've basically trained people and beat people down such that, well, if we can create now the climate change crisis, we can force people to give up all kinds of things. I was watching a video the other day of some chef. It was like in a YouTube video, like a foodie channel, if you will, that popped up in my feed. And the guy was making cicada tacos, and they were like the insects, I mean, you could see where this is going. Okay. Less consumption, less energy intensive, more renewables, this kind of thing. So, the IEA came out, and, it's just another one of these big world bodies that masters of the universe have out there, like the World Bank and these other IMF and these other things that they use to try to shape public opinion or try to control things. So anyways, this is an article from The Guardian that kind of summarized a lot of the items in this report, and I'll just go over them. It goes on to say here, exploitation and development of new oil and gas fields must stop this year, and no new coal-fired power stations can be built if the world is to stay within safe limits of global heating and meet the goal of net zero emissions by 2050, the world's leading energy organization has said. So they're basically recommending that no new development happens in new oil and gas fields, and that no new coal-fired power stations can be built. Okay, well, I'm quite sure that that's not really going to happen. Uh, we've already seen, points out in the article even that there's just been a recent offshore tenders in the UK in the North Sea for new oil and gas fields. So again, I'm not sure they're actually going to be able to do these things, but they're trying to move the Overton window. They're trying to move the discussion towards this. They can't just go in one fell swoop. But again, no new coal-fired power plants. I mean, there's hundreds of coal power plants under construction around the world as we speak, most of them in India, China, Philippines, Indonesia, Bangladesh, all these places, right? All these developing countries that need electricity. In its strongest warning yet on the need to drastically scale back fossil fuels, the International Energy Agency also called for no new fossil fuel cars to be sold beyond 2035, and for global investment in energy to more than double from 2 trillion a year to 5 trillion. The result would not be an economic burden, as some have claimed, but a net benefit to the economy. We don't really have to have a debate about this. We have a country that tried to pursue this on a grand scale. We've seen it's been a failure. We've seen it hasn't been an economic boom. We've seen no net reductions, or at least big reductions in CO2. The country is Germany. they have spent close to $500 billion on their energy transition, which was this big push for renewables and all these other things. And look what they have. Some of the highest electricity costs in Europe, if not the highest, more coal plants being built, more coal burning being done. And I'm not even talking about the dirtiest coal that you can find is brown lignite coal, which we've talked about before. How can these people sit there and keep saying these things with a straight face? That's why alternative media is growing. People are tired of being lied to. They're tired. They see, anything that comes out of any of these mainstream media or any of these organizations' mouths is you have to come with the initial view that it's a lie. They are liars. They lie constantly because they want more money and power. That's what this has been about and is always about. The IEA has set out 400 milestones. Like I said, I wasn't going to read through the whole thing because it's stupid. I'm not going to do it. You can do it if you want. I'll put a link to it. The IEA has set out 400 milestones for governments to reach. Well, how about the people in the countries of the various of these countries with these governments? They determine what they want to do, not an international body of unelected, bureaucrats that no one put in power that are there to get, an easy life and to control other people. No, I don't want to achieve the 400 milestones set out by the IEA. What I would like to do is have a referendum in this country, or like we have a laboratory of 50 different states where some pursue these dumb policies and have net migration out of their places, less economic activity, less opportunity. In places, other states that don't pursue these dumb policies and have net migration in higher, standards of living. That's what I like. And then people can judge for themselves. But we can't have that, right? The masters of the universe then can't have power and wealth. That's what this is all about. Again, phasing out of new fossil fuel cars from 2035 and the decarbonization of global electricity generation by 2040. Its analysis also took into account a global population rise of about 2 billion people, as well as the need to supply electricity to 785 million people who do not have access to it, and clean cooking to the 2.6 billion people who currently lack it. This is exactly what I've been talking about. The numbers are staggering. In these countries where people, are cooking with wood or animal dung, or haven't even flipped a light switch, they're not going to go from burning animal dung to wind power and batteries. It's not going to happen. The money doesn't exist. If you want to get power as quickly as possible and cheaply as possible, you build a coal-fired plant. Or if you have gas reserves, you build a gas plant. That's just how you do it. And that's how you raise standards of living. That's how you fix other problems like overpopulation and things in poverty. But they're not interested in doing that. What I think they would like to do is just eliminate these types of populations. So going into the first slide, this was off of Bloomberg. It was on Twitter. Title of the slide's Energy Seppeku, suicide. California tells utilities to replace power from closing nuke. We know about Diablo Canyon. It's a running nuclear power plant. It provides clean energy. It has had quite a bit of investment made into it to allow it to continue to operate safely and effectively for many, many more years. And these people in California, the regulators, want to shut it down. So you really have to ask, is their goal to really decarbonize? Because you have an asset that's already built and running that's providing clean, CO2-free energy, and they want to shut it down and replace it with, you guessed it, renewables. Let's see what it says. California regulators issued 2 proposals to require utilities to secure 11,500 megawatts of new power resources to replace a retiring nuclear power plant and natural gas plants, according to a statement released Friday. New electricity supplies need to be available between 2023 and 2026, with almost all of the resources coming from zero carbon sources. What are the zero carbon sources? And then the aficionado or advocate for rebuildable energy will say, well, wind and solar, they're not zero carbon. There's a huge amounts of carbon that go into making these things. Again, read what this says. You're going to shut down perfectly good, already built nuclear and gas plants so that you can go out and create new solar and wind farms that have a net increase in CO2. Does that make any sense to anyone? And they're going to replace this 11,500 megawatts. I mean, 2023 is in 2 years. 2026 is in 5 years. I don't think you're going to build 11,500 megawatts in the next 5 years. Maybe they can with the regulatory burdens that are out there, the siting, the planning, the permitting. I mean, give me a break. This stuff takes time. And this is just, people always wonder, well, our enemy is going to be China. The next war is going to be with China or Russia. China and Russia don't have to do anything. All they have to do is sit there for another 10 or 15, 20 years, and we'll just implode from our own contradictions and ridiculous behavior. That's all. This is not going to work. This is going to lead to energy crisis. This is going to lead to blackouts. This is going to, and of course, the government will create all of this issues and problems, and then they will proffer solutions. It's not because of renewable energy. It's because of PG&E and San Diego Gas and Electric. They don't make necessary investments, or, it's because it'll never be the regulators or the bureaucrats or the politicians that cause any of this. And of course, they'll come with another solution with more burdens. That's what they do. See, they create a problem with their stupid regulations and their stupid proclamations. And then when it goes sour, they suffer no recriminations, nothing bad happens to them. They just come up with another stupid plan. And then this stuff just piles itself on top of each other like one contradiction on top of another. If the West is going to go down this road, it's going to slowly but surely become less economically competitive with the rest of the world, i.e. China. That's why China's on the upswing. If we're not going to be competitive, then how are we going to be a leader? How are we going to be a counterbalance to the so-called, ambitions of what's happening in China for them to emerge as a world power? I can assure you that if you have a problem with the way the United States operates its hegemon around the world, you're certainly going to have a problem with the way the Chinese do it, because they could care less. Now, I put this on here. It was another chart off Twitter. What I wanted to show you basically is not necessarily ignore all this, but what I wanted to talk about is global energy production since 1800. In the year 2019, which was just 2 years ago, this is the world, 173,000 terawatt hours, trillion watt hours. Look what the majority of it was produced by. Okay, fossil fuels. I mean, here's nuclear down here. It's not even, not even 5%. I mean, this is the numbers are wind and solar. You can't barely see them. It's so small. I mean, it's like 1%, 3%, something like that, 2%. This isn't going to get fixed in the next 5 or 10 years. So you're not, I've talked about this before. The numbers are so large. The amount of energy consumed is so large. The sunk capital and of the last 100 years, basically, of creating all this isn't going to be reversed, or you're going to shut all this down and this is all going to increase in the next 5 to 10 years. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. It will not happen. And the funny thing about it is, like I've mentioned before, any kind of transition that you want to have to rebuildables or renewables, whatever you want to call them, is going to be because of this. You have to use coal. You have to use oil in order to build, maintain, ship, construct all of these wind and solar plants. That's what people don't seem to get. How much energy goes into producing, I've talked about this ad nauseum, how much energy goes into producing this polysilicon, the steel, the smelting and refining of aluminum, the glass making, all kinds of stuff, the cement kilns, the basic oxygen furnaces for steel. It's just like ignored. Can people be this dumb? Yes, they are. So getting back into energy, one of the things, I've been big on the oil rally this year. And I think we're going to in the second half, which we're getting ready, Memorial Days next week. That's the typical beginning of the holiday travel season. The restrictions on traveling, and I mean, everything's pretty much opened up here in Texas. You can pretty much walk in anywhere without a mask. Places that I go, people still wear them, but some people don't. But everything's open, everything's doing good. People are going to want to travel, and oil demand's coming back. One of the knocks against the second half recovery or further advancement in oil prices was, well, India's having a COVID explosion. Yes, they did, just like every other country had, and it's already rolled over. I've been watching this on a daily basis on Worldometer, and case counts are already down massively, and as we go, further and further into the year, uh, we will see, this number continue to come down like it's come down in every single other country. And, the healthcare system there is not good. This probably exacerbated the amount of cases and deaths. But like any other virus, it goes through these bell curves. You can look on Worldometer country by country, it's the same pattern, regardless of the amount of vaccinations, regardless of the amount of masks or anything else. I said this before, viruses are going to virus. They operate the same. This one's no different. This is a respiratory cold virus. It's a little bit more virulent than a typical rhinovirus that you get in the cold and flu season, but it follows the same. It's basically the same thing. It's not Ebola. And so what we should see is the pillar or the bearish case around, well, India is going to be a drag on oil prices. That narrative's going to melt away. Wanted to point this out because, we had this the numbers continue to come in on the economy, because of the stimulus checks and the pumping. But just look at this. I mean, this is basically an index that they have that tracks the amount of truck drivers available. I mean, I was shocked when I saw this. I mean, I've known for a while that there's been a truck driver shortage, but look at where we're at now. I mean, even compared to the recent past, this is like, wow, this is really crazy. And so, this is going to contribute to bottlenecks, supply disruptions, increased prices, plus people that are driving these trucks. They're going to be able to command higher wages, right? We've talked about that too. That wage increases are going to be one of the catalysts that we believe is going to propel inflation higher. I read an article. We had the recent Colonial pipeline situation where some hackers got in there, basically shut it down. But they also mentioned the fact that there was such a shortage of these gasoline tanker drivers or these fuel tanker drivers. It's special licenses you need and certifications. It's not just some guy pulling a trailer full of, Oreos or something. You really got to know what you're doing. And they said that there's a shortage. I mean, and some of the guys were making like six figures doing this. So something to be considered if you're looking for a job, I guess. But this is going to, like I said, this is really going to contribute to, I mean, I don't know what this index means. I mean, I'm just showing you the visual that this is really, really, there's really a shortage of drivers. So that's going to mean higher prices. Shortages create higher prices. We'll see if this type of thing goes away. It's just another brick in the wall of the higher inflation theme. So I wanted to talk about this because I know this is going to piss people off. There's, especially younger people that are in this. I mean, we're seeing what amounts to basically another crypto bust, right? We've seen this before. I remember reading about the Nifty 50 stocks in the 70s, the mania that was there. I saw the mania in the .com bubble, and now I'm wondering. I'm not declaring it for, but I am wondering if we're now seeing a deflating bubble in cryptocurrencies. And the thing I go back to that I try to warn people about, and I don't know why a lot of people that are invested in this, and it goes back to the old saying that it's hard to get a man to change his view when his livelihood depends on him not changing his view. I mean, if you're invested in this, if you've made a lot of money in cryptocurrencies, if this is your thing, and you spend a lot of time and effort and invested emotionally in this, which is a mistake, by the way, in investing, but we've talked about that before. But if you've done that, you're not going to be apt to want to listen to reason or listen to historical narratives. You create a new, the human mind's very good at creating narratives to justify behavior. And the one thing I want to point out is digital currencies by governments are coming. They're letting all of you guys that are doing all that work out there, you're doing all the work for them. You're doing all the programming, the thought, the problem solving. And this idea, I still don't understand it. Somebody needs to explain to me exactly how this is going to work. When the digital currencies from the government come, which I think that are inevitable, you keep seeing more and more discussion about it, whether it's Christine Lagarde, whether it's the Chinese, whether it's now Jay Powell, he's talking about it. If these governments go to the trouble, and remember what they're all about, they're nefarious actors that are working in their own interest. Remember that. That's the premise that they're working from. They want more power and they want more wealth. Okay, that's the premise. They're not here to help you. They're not here to solve problems for you. They're here to uh, solidify and codify their position of power. That's the way it is. That's human nature. That's evil. That's how evil operates. And now we're getting into, basically philosophical discussions, and people don't like to have these. Do you think Christine Lagarde is wanting to introduce a digital currency in the EU because she's trying to help everybody? Or this putz, Jay Powell? Okay, these people are put in positions because they do what they're told to do. Digital currencies are coming. I don't know the time frame. Governments are going to implement them. And all these developers and all the people doing all this great work on these currencies. I mean, from a libertarian's perspective and a free market perspective, I'm for it. They should be able to flourish and let the best coin win, the best methodology, the best technology win. Is the government going to allow that when they come out with their currency? Federal Reserve comes out with a currency tied directly to you. No middleman now. They can track every transaction, every amount of money that you get. There's no more tax evasion. There's no more illicit, illegal activities going on. Okay. They can track everything. Okay. That's what this is about. So they're just going to leave Bitcoin and Ethereum alone. They're just going to let them exist in a parallel universe. Because what would happen is everybody would leave the digital currency that the government put together and go to these other free market currencies or crypto uh, technologies, because people want freedom. People yearn for freedom. The government doesn't want you to have freedom. So when they inevitably roll these things out, whenever they decide to, they're going to make it illegal. The other technologies illegal and they will use whatever level of force is required per individual. It might be a nasty gram. I mean, on the 1040 this year, it asks you if you own any cryptocurrency. You have to check a box. I told you this stuff was coming. I told it said back as far as 2017 during the last crypto bubble, or the first that when it. I won't say it's the first, but when it hit 20,000, people were calling me. Should I get involved in this? At the top, of course. And what about the tax implications? Can I not have to pay taxes on my gains? That's what people were concerned about. You think the government doesn't know this? You think the people that are running things don't know this? You think they're going to spend all this time and effort to get a situation where they can control and know everything about you, and then you're just going to walk off and just do what you want? No, it's not going to be allowed. And you're seeing it's not just this one slide, but it's week after week. I'm seeing more and more of this information come out. Now, you guys that know a lot more about this than I do, the technology, you may be able to school me up and tell me, well, they just can't do it, and here's why they can't do it, or here's why they're going to fail, or here's why their technology won't work. But I will tell you that they have a monopoly on violence. That's what you need to understand. They will use whatever level of violence. It could be a nasty letter from the IRS or whatever regulatory body, or it could be an armed goon squad that comes to your place and shoots you down and burns you out. And of course, they bring all the cameras. There's a reason why they perp walk these people and why they do these, type of things. So that the rest of the rubes and the rest of the peasants get the message. That could be me. And most people will comply. So if, I've brought up historical narratives and people say, well, that would never happen nowadays. It's 2021. But, when they had during the French Revolution, when they had the uh, currency that they were inflating. I think it was called the assignat, something like that. I can't pronounce it. You couldn't use, people were using, British pounds and Swiss francs and gold and silver. They were doing anything they could to not have to hold and use a hyperinflating state currency that the revolutionary government had produced. And so they just passed a referendum. If you get caught with any other type of currency, using it, doing whatever, it's the guillotine. And I'm sure people still, did what, there's a certain amount of outlaws out there that are going to roll hard. I know that, but most people are not. They're going to go, wait a minute, I'm not going to prison for the rest of my life. Oh, it's really not that bad. You can justify it, right? So the slide, let's get to the slide. Jay Powell on Thursday accelerated the Federal Reserve's consideration of a possible digital version of the dollar that would be controlled by the U.S. central bank. Powell indicated the Fed was closely monitoring private sector payments innovations. See, you're doing all the work for them. Of course, they're monitoring. They're going to find out what the best technology is and adopt it, and then Canex everything else, including the launch of stablecoins and the price gyrations of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. As stablecoins proliferate, he urged enhanced regulatory oversight. We keep hearing this, not just here, but in the EU, everywhere. I mean, in India, they're banning cryptocurrencies, but I think I read an article. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. You're seeing more and more of this every day. And if you're sitting here thinking that it's not going to happen, then I think you're the one that needs to, you know, that needs to reassess your point of view, because the history is with me. All of a sudden, this government that just locked everybody down and destroyed all these businesses over a cold and flu virus is going to they're going to spend all this time creating a digital dollar and then let you guys just do whatever you want. I don't think so. Stablecoins proliferate, he urged enhanced regulatory oversight, which, quote, includes paying attention to private sector payment innovators who are currently not within the traditional regulatory arrangements applied to banks, investment firms, and other financial intermediaries. So, I mean, I had crypto gains this year. I used a software package. I reported the gains. I suggest you do the same. I don't suggest you get cute with these people. Okay. I suggest that you keep the game going, and there's other ways to subvert the system except, putting yourself out there. I tell the story of Peter Schiff's dad, Erwin Schiff. People want to bag on Peter Schiff all the time because he's a gold bug. Well, I mean, he probably deserves a certain amount of incoming fire, but his dad was a guy that argued against the income tax, the legalities of it. It's not constitutional, and he made very good arguments. And he created I don't know the whole story, but basically he was a tax protester for most of his life. I don't know if he actually didn't pay his taxes, but he wrote a lot of books and a lot of papers about, white papers about the illegality of the personal income tax and all these different things. The guy spent 30 years in prison. He died in prison of skin cancer. He got melanoma and they wouldn't treat him. He died chained to a prison hospital bed. I can go out tonight on Saturday night to a bar, get in an argument with somebody, crack them in the head with a pool cue under the influence of alcohol, and maybe, depending on what state I am, it might be manslaughter or, third-degree murder, and I might do 3 to 5 years and get out early if I'm, if it's a first offense. You're out here being a tax protester. You're out here doing this type of stuff. You're out here doing things that are subverting the order that they are trying. They make sure to make examples of these people. 30, 40 years in prison, no parole, that kind of stuff. So, like I said, I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I'm just trying to warn people. And like I said, I am not the expert on these things. I don't follow it day to day. I don't know exactly what technologies and how they're going to be able to, get around the government and all this stuff and how they think they're going to do it. I'd be curious to know how that's going to work. But to just sit here and say, oh, they'll never be able to do it. That's what I usually hear. They can't do it. They don't know what they're doing. They'll never do that. That's not an argument. That's just hope. That's denial. And denial is a river in Egypt, not a basis for running your financial matters. Good tweet here. This is going to piss off you guys and the crypto guys. Hey, look, I have traded cryptocurrencies. The bubble has burst. This current bubble has burst. There's too many idiots in there that didn't know what they were doing. Too many people in there with their stimmy checks. And, you get the last man in. And then, I think it was like the appearance of Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live seemed to be the top, and the Coinbase IPO. I mean, there's certain things in retrospect you look back and say, every idiot is now in. There's no one else to buy. There's no new money. That may have been the top. Anyways, I like what this guy says, and I agree with it. I've said it since day one. Even so, I've been in cryptocurrencies, messing around with them off and on since 2016, 17. But this is what my view of it is. Let's be real. 99% of people aren't putting their money into crypto because of decentralization or because it's a hedge against inflation. They're putting money in it to get rich as quickly as possible. If the get rich quick narrative changes, then the volume will disappear. I agree. And I think that's what we're seeing. When something starts going down, we're seeing the same thing in Cathie Wood's ARK funds. Those things are collapsing now. The liquidity dries up, and these things are like, a fart in the wind or a puddle in the desert. They just evaporate. They go away. And we warned many times on this channel about various bubbles that would appear because of the central bank liquidity. We've seen unprecedented historical levels of liquidity added to these markets. And so we warned that multiple bubbles in various sectors would just keep popping up. And we've seen that. We're going to see more. We're going to see a bubble in uranium stocks. We're going to see a bubble in gold stocks. We're probably going to see a bubble in oil stocks when oil goes over $100 a barrel in the next couple of years. That's what we're going to see, because we're in this perpetual liquidity infusion that cannot stop, or the whole thing implodes. And let's be real, this is what most of the people that are messing around with crypto are talking about. They just want it. If it's going up, they're buying it. I mean, I'm not going to mention all the different coins, but there's coins that even a guy created a coin just as a goof, and the thing was worth tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it's this Doge coin is still worth like $40 billion even after it's dropped. I mean, what's going on in people's heads? These things have, I've talked to many people. Do you own Bitcoin? Yeah, I own some Bitcoin. Yeah, it's going up. Or somebody was asking me about it, and I said, well, did you read the white paper from Satoshi Nakamoto? Who's that? They don't even know anything about it. So to tell me that most people get crypto, they don't. That it's going up, so they buy it. Tech stocks were going up, so they buy them. It's human nature. It's nothing new. Nothing new under the sun. Thing I wanted to talk about here real quick, especially when it comes to commodities, is that Peter Sansbury has been talking about this a while. I interviewed him about a couple months ago. You need to watch this, because this is the Bloomberg Commodity Index year-over-year change in light blue, and this is the Chinese Credit Impulse 12-month change, right? So what you can see is when China ramps up the credit impulses, commodities seem to move up, right? And we have a big divergence here. This only goes back to 2010. You could just say, well, the data set's not that good, but you could have three previous credit impulses, which led to increases in the commodity index year over year. And when the credit impulses were pulled in, you will note that the commodity index pulled back. So what I'm suggesting to you is we're up here, and the commodities have really flown. Everybody's in them. But the Chinese have pulled back on the liquidity and their credit impulse. So there's a divergence here. Either this is going to turn around and go up, credit in China, or we're going to probably see a pullback. And I suggest we're probably going to see the pullback in the year-over-year increase in the commodity index. So depends how far this goes down, how far they pull this back. See, in the past they've pulled it back significantly, and we'll just see what happens. We have to watch this. But if you start seeing the commodities start to roll over, you know why. Now, we have a lot of other things going on now because of all the liquidity being put into the system by all the other countries too, not just China. So this may go on a little bit longer than typical, but it's just something I wanted to point out. So if we start scaling back on some of our commodity picks, there's certain things I won't sell, like uranium. Uranium's not even really, the narrative and the story is not even really tied to this. Copper could be affected here, some other things, but there's other things going on too. This isn't to say that the longer term commodity bull market that I envision isn't going to happen. It's just saying that you could have a big pullback. We've had a big run now in these prices, these commodities, and these commodity stocks. It's nothing to say that they couldn't pull back. And the Chinese have actually put out in their state organs, their media, that they wish to, they see these prices are too high. And so we'll see. We'll have to watch it. But I just wanted to point this out because it's very interesting. And divergences like this don't typically last. Copper nationalism. This is, could something that could be offsetting it. We've talked a little bit about it in the past. We've had more and more news now. The Chile lower house, that's their House of Representatives, approved by 78 votes to 55 a royalty bill that would add a 3% tax on sales of copper and lithium over production of 12,000 tons and 50,000 tons per year, respectively. The bill also includes a progressive tax on copper sales depending on the market price. The progressive tax would reach 60% on additional income when the market price is $3.50 to $4 a pound, and 75% when above $4 a pound. So you're basically at, $4.45, something like that, a pound for copper. So the new bill, if it gets passed by the Senate, would see a 75% progressive tax on your sales. I mean, it's confiscatory. It's confiscation of profits, basically. So when you have that, do not expect more copper to be produced. Do not expect new mines to be explored for. Do not expect more mines to be built. You will also note that if you look at what's happening in politics in Chile, if you can believe this, the Communist Party is making a big resurgence there. As a matter of fact, they won enough seats, I believe, in the recent election that they are going to change the constitution of Chile now. And that will be a reversal of basically 40 years of free market principles. They're planning on changing a lot of the, and of course it's for the people. It's always for the people. I would suggest to you that that will not work out well if that happens. So you have Castillo here in Peru. He's having the runoff June 6th with Fujimori. Fujimori being more of the free market right wing. Castillo being the left wing, basically Marxist. The school teacher with the cowboy hat, the red bandana, the traditional cotton oversized shirt like the peasants wear. You know how this goes. You see this same shtick, never changes, right? It's the same. It's like a caricature. Got the funny cowboy hat that they wear down in South America. That's oversized brim, that kind of thing. And here's what he said based on his observation of what was in Chile. Let us note that Chilean lower house approved a new royalty whose rate reaches 75% if it exceeds $4 a pound, as is the case today. So basically, in the article, he's also calling for a referendum on a new constitution, just like in Chile, like the one in Chile that is being pushed by the resurgent Communist Party. That's what, now it's a different situation. It just could be, rhetoric, but, you're seeing what I'm trying to tell you is that when you have Chile and Peru, that's 37% of world copper supply. And those two countries represent 50% of the new copper projects in the pipeline. So if you have a shift to the left, if you have a shift to policies that are not conducive to people making a legitimate return on their investment, they're not going to invest money there. And if you think that a bunch of peasants up in the jungle areas of Peru are going to be able to design, build, and run a modern copper mine, you're stupid. It's not going to happen. If you think some state company there is going to run it as as efficiently as some of these other companies. Now they have a state mining company in Chile, but as these things get more and more difficult to find, more and more difficult to mine, you need more and more capital, more and more technology, more and more expertise. And if you're going to have confiscation levels of profits, no one's going to come there and do anything. And what I'm suggesting to you is that if this kind of goes this way, if the perception changes, you're going to see less capital and you're going to see less copper down the pipeline. Now, I will throw this in there and juxtapose this with, a country like Uzbekistan, who is moving in the other direction. They're lining up a lot of their state-owned mining enterprises to be privatized, not only in Uzbekistan, but listed in like the London Stock Exchange. So you have that's the kind of places you want to go to. You want to leave New York, Illinois, and California and go to Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Idaho. You want to leave places like Chile and Peru if they're going to go to the left, and go to places that are opening up like Georgia, the country of Georgia, or Uzbekistan. Capital goes where it's treated the best. That is always been the case, and it always will be the case. And so I think if we see more of this resource nationalism, this move by these governments to try and basically confiscate more of the wealth so they can distribute it the way they see fit. I mean, you can have the argument whether that's laudable, whether it should be done, who the resources belong to, the people. Those are all legitimate conversations to have. What I'm telling you is if you pursue those policies, you're going to have less copper and the price will go up over time, because no one that has money is going to voluntarily invest there, and they don't have the capital there themselves, or the expertise, or the technology to do these things themselves. You've seen it in Venezuela. We already have these petri dishes, these experiments we've already seen where people have tried these things. They don't work. Now I'm going to get the, socialist or the uneducated ankle biter that's going to come into the comments and say, well, these resources, that you can make the argument the resources belong to the people. I have no doubt about that. And that there's elites in these countries that cream off the profits. That's exactly right. And that there's abuses by the mining companies. Yes, there are. But there is no system known currently to man that can lift the amount of people out of poverty that capitalism and free markets have. And any place in the world where those things are not pursued, and where state intervention and statist policies are pursued, leads to less economic development. Those are the facts, and they're not in dispute. We have the experiments in real time. We had the Soviet Union. We had communist China. We had Venezuela. We have Cuba. You can go there and look at them. They're disasters. And what happens is you have an elite that it's the same thing. It's just another, grab of power and money by people that are willing to do anything, commit any evil, in the name of the people. Well, people are starving. People are pouring over the borders into Colombia and these other places from Venezuela. You can watch videos. It's on there. People aren't emigrating there and saying, man, I really want to go to Venezuela because it's a paradise where the people come first. I mean, get out of here. I don't talk to stupid people. So something to keep in mind. And this is, this is something to watch, because I think you're going to see more of this going forward. I want to finish up with a Trader Ferg quote. He puts these little nice things out there once in a while. I think you've put this out before, but I just want to remind you. If you want, it's about conviction, basically having conviction, having confidence in your position, and how you make it through the ups and downs and the gyrations and the volatility, and how you can see across the desert to the promised land. He says in his tweet, if you want to be well rewarded, you have to be early. If you want to be early, you have to be patient. If you want to be patient, you have to have conviction. If you want to have conviction, you have to do the research and stop listening to everyone that hasn't. So this is exactly what we're talking about. We were advocating, people that have been longtime listeners, people that have been long-term subscribers to the newsletter know, 2 years ago, the newsletter was not doing well. Value was out of favor. The resource stocks were out of favor. I was on and on. I was going on and on about the potential in uranium and all these other resources. And, everybody was getting rich in tech stocks. Value was out and growth was in. And, everything was hitting on 16 cylinders. And so we got into we could see what was happening in uranium, and you have to get in cheap to get the real asymmetry. Buying now, some of these stocks are at 500-600% already. Now there's going to be more, but wouldn't you have rather bought? I mean, somebody put a comment on my one of my videos recently. It kind of made me chuckle. I don't know what the intent of the comment was, but it made me chuckle. And it's like, well, you wait 3 years. Yeah, but if you have a 600% return, say you sat for 3 years on your uranium stocks and they basically did nothing, which is what happened. And then in the space of, a year, 18 months, you have a 600% return. If you annualize that, I think you'll find that, but that's, people can't sit, they can't be patient. Why can't they be patient? Because they haven't done the research and don't have the confidence and the conviction to know what's going to happen, or have the high probability event. You don't know when lightning's going to strike, but you know it's going to strike. And the only way you get there is by researching, by reading, by thinking, by coming up with your own ideas. You're not going to get them from me. You're not going to get them from Trader Ferg. You're not going to get them from Cuppy or any other guru out there that you're following. And that's what we see a lot. And I talked about the degenerate gamblers at the dog track buying those tip sheets, trying to hit that, $2 trifecta box, and that's not how you have long-term success in this type of investing. You have long-term success in contrarian investing by seeking out areas that are unloved, bombed out, no one cares about, beaten down, and yet you can identify a catalyst for a change in the performance or the change in the fortunes of that particular industry, company, country, what have you. And then you take the position and then you sit and wait. That's how you get the 500, 1,000, 5,000% returns. And they do happen. All right, I think that's it for this week. It is. And appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate the comments. Really enjoy meeting you guys in the comment section. Again, channel continues to grow. We appreciate it. A lot of people seem to think our channel should be growing a lot faster. Hey, help me out. Subscribe, do what you need to do, comment, whatever you feel. But the channel, I think we're attracting a good, audience, and I really enjoy doing this and enjoy talking with you guys every week. So that's it for this week. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you.